think the adoption is usually higher when there's challenges with document management and
If you're
they're trying to
solving a problem, right?
exactly.
I completely agree with that. If you can actually take the time to really discuss, like that, hey, what are your pain points? What are the
Mhm.
biggest problems with your job? And then as a consultant or intelligent IT professional who cares about getting results to your users, you're going to ask those types of questions. And then hopefully you're going to figure out what parts of Microsoft technology could you use to solve those people's problems.
Hello and welcome to Cissay's Collab Space. My name is Amy Cissay, and today we have Matthew Bailey joining us today. Matthew, it is such a pleasure to have you here because we have known each other for a really, really long time and we always have great conversations. So please give an introduction of who you are.
All right. Well, thanks for having me to your cast. I appreciate it. So my name's Matthew Bailey. I mostly have been in the Microsoft space for over 25 years. A lot of the Microsoft Cloud. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, former Microsoft MVP, and that's kind of my whole world of speaking, writing books, or working on that in my jobs or people that I get along with or go to events with. And yeah, so
And I thought you had written a book. What was the name of the book or books that
right.
you've authored?
Yep, two. I had a couple books. They're a little old, but the first one was called The SharePoint Business Analyst, and then the other book I co-wrote with Melissa Hubbard, which was Mastering Microsoft Teams. That was the first book that hit the press in around 2018 before Teams exploded and took over the world. So
Yes, I do remember that now. Absolutely. And so, with writing a book, how do you even keep track of all the changes that are happening all the time?
right. Well, so admittedly, books have a shelf life because updating a book with and keeping it up to date with Microsoft, which every other day it gets renamed or something changes or something, you can't always keep up with it, but you try to for a while at least. And so, yeah, understandably, it's not necessarily always going to be a perfect up to date resource versus something in a moment in time that was beneficial and useful to people till they learned it. And that cycle kind of falls off because with tech, which I think we're going to get into in a little bit, just that like many things in life, tech and certain specific types of technology have their cycles. And obviously, the entire world is chatting about AI at the moment, and that's the super cycle that we're currently in. So.
Yeah. So, what are the trends that you're seeing in tech right now that people are working on that you're helping people out with or companies out with? What does that look like?
Sure. So I'm currently working in the financial space. So a lot of the things that I have to interact with, there's extreme like security and risk and compliance rules, guidelines, regulations, things like that that I have to accommodate to. However, that being said, I am seeing some things with Microsoft AI actually starting to be worked on, or people are trying to integrate it and find use cases for it. So although there's a lot of hype with AI and Microsoft AI at the moment, there's still some legitimate things happening where people are already trying to get it into the normal work cycle of a human's daily activities at work. Some of the things I've seen at one of the places that I'm working at the moment is that they're working on a publicly accessible chatbot for consumer financial questions and answers. So if you have a consumer account with this large financial institution, that there'll be a chatbot eventually where you can ask questions about things. Which currently being built with what was Power Virtual Agents, but now it's Copilot Studio with integrations into Azure AI. Additionally, I not only at the financial organization I'm at, but at some other places I've seen people are just using regular Copilot for Microsoft 365, and I see them doing things as simple as finding uses to help it create presentations from Word documents, summarizing long email chains have gone back and forth between many people over hours or days. But and then the number one I see, which like is an immediate, in my opinion, value proposition is that we have meetings all the time because we're in IT, and project managers are usually the ones in that are responsible for the meeting as far as who was invited, what time is it at, and how the recap notes need to be sent out. With my own eyes, I've seen something that used to take between 30 minutes to an hour for that project manager to document, summarize, and send out to everyone, even if that, because some people may have missed the meeting, what happened. And now I'm seeing things within 3 minutes saying, notes tabulated from Microsoft Copilot, please review for accuracy, but just that real world, like bam, immediate time savings from it is something I'm already seeing happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I really, really enjoy with the Team Premium license that I have, that also comes with the Copilot license, is the meeting recap with the summary, the chapters of where certain items, certain topics occurred within the meeting, and then the follow on like action items. That right there is awesome for sure.
Yeah, for some, yeah, that if especially if you have like eight, because like I said, I don't know how it is where you're working, but it literally, it's from the moment I get on my computer until the end of the day, it's just nothing but meetings and problems and meetings and problems. And to save, to save that much time, one after the other, after the other, after the other, it's quite valuable. So
I completely understand. To
you're
summarize what
you're
the meetings are, right? It's like meetings, problems, resolving issues.
right. Meetings, problems with the meetings, and meetings about problems, and then more meetings. Yeah. So
Absolutely. So, do you feel like the chatbot experience is going to change where traditionally it was that you had to train the chatbot with a set of, I think they were called topics or let's just say questions that you then said, these are the answers, right? Do you feel like with these large language models that now the chatbot experience on this public facing website will be more intelligent with answering questions, but it's specific to your company's information, data, content?
So I don't. So I will say this with some of the Microsoft stuff. I've tried to fully understand that if you've created something and you have not grounded the content, meaning you just said search all of these resources, not only that one resource. I haven't necessarily come up with a 100% accurate way to try to force the training and say, you didn't give me the right answer. Let me try to retrain you again. Let me try to retrain you again, kind of a thing, versus if you say very specifically, just only go look there for your answers. I've that is an easier and more accurate way to get to make your bot work the way that you want it to work. Um, yeah, because I even in sometimes when I've used the same commands and I haven't grounded it specifically, I'm just saying, why don't I go to copilot.microsoft.com, and I'm on the internal side where it's searching the web and all of the data in our org. The same prompt doesn't always bring back the same answers. So that's another thing that to be aware of. So
You know what would have been cool? What would have been cool is if this bot could have looked at Viva Topics, right? Like, I don't know if you've used Viva Topics, but that whole concept of, you know, it giving you the suggestions of topic pages, but then you can tailor that content and here's the answer around that topic. But then you can say to Copilot, hey, this is where the answer is if it's related to that topic.
right, and when you do so regular Copilot, if you do ask the question, and then I think you put a slash and the link to the document, like you as the
Mhm.
end user can say, "Go look here." But with Copilot Studio, which is more that custom being built for people, you can intentionally say, "Go look at this place to find your topic." So just there's two ways to do it depending on Copilot Studio or Microsoft Copilot for 365. I don't know if everyone knows that for the end user version with Microsoft 365, if you type in the path to that file, at least you can try to tell it where it's supposed to go look. So
Right. That's pretty cool. All right, it's getting smarter and smarter, better and better for sure.
yeah, or
But
little by little. Yep.
yes, little by little for sure. So what about Syntex? I feel like you did a presentation on that recently, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, I'm back on my world tour, speaking at every city on earth about Microsoft technology again. So, a couple of my stops, my big hoedowns were one of them was in New York City where I saw you last, and I was speaking on Microsoft Syntex, which is now a part of SharePoint Premium. The name is still being held at the moment, but it's basically the part of SharePoint Premium that is specific to content AI. What I mean by that is either having AI go in to look at your content in SharePoint and extract data out of it, or taking content you have and building from it. So a couple of the things I love about Microsoft Syntex are, for example, some templates where if you had it, which I did in my demo, let's say you had a job recruitment list in SharePoint, and you had people, maybe they submitted their resume and they filled out a little form of who they are and their job they're applying for and their address and all that kind of how much salary they'd like. They'd get into the list, and then as you worked through it, you would, if you got to the point where you actually were going to generate an offer, you can bring in some of the new connectors with Power Automate for Syntex, which would look at all of the things that have happened over the history of that candidate's path from beginning of submission till job offer, and then you can create a letter, like a job offer letter, that's pulling the content out of that, and then building from a template that's saying, dear user, we are offering you a job at, except it's putting in their name, their salary, their job position, benefits like that. So that's one cool thing. And then the other way, in the other direction for extraction. So a great example for this may be that you have contracts or legal documents or even business receipts, where Microsoft has made pre-built models so that you don't have to do very much training, and it immediately recognizes certain pieces of information on that file or on that receipt, and it pulls them out and puts them in SharePoint columns, so that now you've reduced a great deal of like manual data entry.
Okay, so I really, really enjoyed that use case on the recruitment perspective. But then I'm also thinking for the data extraction piece, what would be cool is if you had a ton of resumes and then you wanted to, or the recruiter wanted to extract key information about the candidates and kind of do a sort filter through the library,
Right.
right? To
So
kind of drill down through.
I think it's possible, but I don't, the accuracy might not quite be where we want. But there's not only does Syntax come with pre-built models, which there's like four, I think, yeah, there's about four of them at the moment. You can create your own custom models and you can train them.
Right.
So if you had 50 resumes, that's a lot, but it's a minimum of five. However, being honest, if most resumes aren't in exactly the same format, some people have their name in the middle, some people put their name on the side, and the way their job things go out different ways, that you have to upload each file, and then you literally get into the point where you train your custom model and you pull it each one up on the page, and you'd like highlight the little boxes of name, address, job one, job two, education. And after doing enough of them, in most cases, Syntax now will use all of that training that you've done to create your own custom model for resume extraction, so that any new resumes that come in, upload them into a SharePoint library where you've just set that model to be the default, and it will extract it into columns for you.
Yep. I think it's pretty cool for sure.
Yep.
I mean, I think that to your point, the pre-built models are a good way to get started very quickly and easily.
Yeah, I like that because I admittedly not I don't like immediately understand everything, right? I have to learn just like everybody else. But I will say, if you start to learn something new and it looks kind of overwhelming, because at the first moment I was like, gosh, I'm not sure I'm getting what this thing does. But if you can accomplish something quickly, like, hey, new library, pre-built model for receipt, And then I say, hey, go scan and upload a receipt, and you see it, and it pulls all the data out in columns. You're like, wow, that was easy. Wow, that was cool. Now I want to learn more, right? Because you've been able to complete something successfully in a short amount of time. So
Absolutely. So do you feel like you see more cases of Syntex versus Copilot being actually used, especially as it relates to being in the financial industry? Like, I'm just trying to think of like the adoption, right? Because it's here, but are people really embracing it and using it, or are there challenges?
right. So regular Copilot, just being completely honest, there's not everyone that was excited to get in on your pilots ends up being like your long-term user. So with that, because we at one of the places I've been working at, we had a pilot of 300 users total, and of course, when you ask people who would like to be a part of it, like half the organization raises their hand because they're all excited and want to get to it. But then after you get them a license and give them all this help to start doing it, maybe they get too busy with work or family and they can't, or they did it and it didn't do exactly what they wanted. And so they just said, I don't have time for this. So there's that reality of there's anticipated like fall off that's going to happen. Not everybody on the planet's going to use it. Now, that being said, if you are careful in how you do your pilots and you want to make sure that, hey, these licenses can cost up to $30 a month per person for the M365 Copilot license. I want to make sure you're using this if I'm going to keep paying for this license, right? And in those cases, hopefully you've done something such as been referencing the Copilot Admin Center. You've set up the Viva analytics portion that now generates reports on how many times each user used which part of Microsoft Copilot. And additionally, if you have potentially legal or compliance reasons where you need to actually look at what the people have been doing it, you can get into eDiscovery and eDiscovery Premium and some with the audit logs to see how many times has somebody used it and with which part of the app and what were the things they were saying back and forth. So there's a way to intelligently go about this so that when you're all done, you're like, okay, maybe not all of these people are going to be Copilot users, but this many people are, and we're going to keep paying for those people. And we see productivity, we see changes, we see enhancements. With things like content AI extraction or compilation with Syntex, I think part of that, I haven't seen a massive amount of adoption yet, but I will say this. Microsoft has several apps available, such as Power Automate, Power Apps, Copilot Studio with AI Builder credits. They also have Azure, I think it's like Bot Chat and Azure AI Search and a lot of things with that. And then Syntex with its own models they they're kind of offering the same thing in different places for different prices. So that because of that, it's hard for me to just say, oh, there's not adoption, but the reality of it is maybe this person's using AI Builder in Power Automate to do their model data extraction based on models versus that person over there was using Syntax versus that person over there is using Azure AI in some capacity. So that's a little bit more like granular, and you have to figure out, if after looking at all of that, how many people are using it. So
Right. And I think to your point, it's like just because there's a tool or a technology, it's really around what is the business requirement that it's fulfilling. And I think that, like, I love, when a client has a specific business requirement that's around like data extraction, right? We're like, yes, great. There's no, we have to sell you on this and, try to get you comfortable with it because they know they want to use it, which is awesome. And I think the adoption is usually higher when there's challenges with document management and
if you're
they're trying to
solving a problem, right?
exactly.
I completely agree with that. If you can actually take the time to really discuss, like that, hey, what are your pain points? What are the
Mhm.
biggest problems with your job? And then as a consultant or just a well, um, I don't know, an intelligent IT professional who cares about getting results to your your users, you're going to ask those types of questions, and then hopefully you're going to figure out what parts of Microsoft technology could you use to solve those people's problems. So I completely am on board with you on that one.
Yeah,
If it's a need to have, not a nice to have, that always makes adoption dramatically increase.
exactly. Or I don't need this, but you're telling me I do.
Right. Well, that's the reality in IT. There's a lot of that sales, like, you don't need this, but I'm going to make say you have to buy it. But so is that balance between hype and reality that all of us in IT have to face, right? So, you know,
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that I am curious to see more around Copilot as it relates to especially the government space. I'm interested in seeing how Copilot is going to be used in a way that's going to make automation as it relates to the services that's being provided to the public way more efficient. Uh,
right. So it's been a few years since I was working in government space, but because I live in DC, we both live in this area and such, but I have had some government contracts in the past, and I think looking back at them, I could see how things were. They had COVID had hit when I was at one of the major agencies, and I remember there was like this like 24-hour nonstop work by some of the people in the agency because they had to put out these formal guidelines and regulations of what are you supposed to do now that COVID is hit, and publish them on a public website. And although some of that information, of course, would be specific to inside the agency, I was thinking like, wow, if they'd had Copilot, not only could it help rewrite things grammatically for them, give them ideas of how to write things, maybe find data if everything had been scanned and put into the semantic index behind the scenes where all the data is, that they could try to help them find the right documents with the right answers. You know, so I mean, I think about like what could have been better in the past had they had Copilot. So I hope things like that in the future for government agencies that'll be the kind of thoughts that they may have and want to use it as well.
That's so true. I remember that time frame because I remember we were working on our team had to work on a power apps. And like as soon as, on the news you hear that OPM has changed something, right? And it's like, yeah, that's impacting this app we're working on right now. And so it was like constant change, very abrupt during that time. And so I do agree because there was a lot of, okay, we're waiting for this policy, or how does the policy impact us? OPM says this. What is that like for this agency? Where is this policy, right? Are all the policies in one site or are they all over the place? So I
Right.
do agree with
And
you.
yeah, and as with most organizations, everything's usually not in the one place that's like it's supposed to be, and search is your friend. So, but
We hope you find it.
yeah.
So, so as you are, diving into the AI realm of things, how do you see just history repeating itself?
Sure. So when we were catching up and at that Microsoft community event a couple months ago in New York City, and I had kind of like just expressed my personal opinions on how I think all of this new AI stuff's going to unfold. So I'm kind of old. I try not to look old, but I am.
You
And
don't look old at all. You
so
say that. 'Cause I was like, how long have you been
yeah. So, but the reason that is because Matthew was around for the original dot-com boom in the early 90s. In fact, that was when I got into IT. Microsoft, there was something called NT, Windows NT. Novell ran the world. Lotus Notes was still hot and popular. SharePoint was just hadn't even started to exist yet. That was 2000. But what I distinctly remember was it was this completely not necessarily understood thing that was starting to take over, and a lot in California again, where most of the tech hype starts, right? Silicon Valley. And I was out there at that time working on a contract, and I remember suddenly this thing called the internet. It was like, this is going to change the world. This is going to revolutionize everything. And in some ways, it did start to become profitable, and companies were starting to invest massive amounts of money in all of this fiber optic infrastructure so that people could get web pages from place to place, and server farms and server caching, everything that would make the internet what it is today. But admittedly, although it had some cool ideas and it was new and people were starting to see some, there was also the hype bubble. A lot of the companies like pets.com and some other internet stocks that weren't even necessarily making money, but everyone was like buying them and they would run up to $1,000 a share kind of stuff. When the bubble popped, obviously the hype wore off, and only the people that were truly there with genuine business models and ideas and figured out how to make them profitable were able to stay through those ashes and then slowly build and push themselves into the entire world. I mean, if you tell somebody today, especially the kids, they're like, the internet didn't exist 25 years ago, kind of a thing, because to them, it's so normal. It's such an extension of their entire life, right? But it had to start somewhere. And my thing with the AI hype, I do think maybe it's a little bit of a bubble at the moment, but if you think back to if somebody told you Amazon or Microsoft were going to be some of the biggest companies in the world 20 years from now, and Apple, I mean, Apple didn't even have an iPod or an iPhone at that point. They just had that little old looking Mac thing that you could use, right?
I
And
remember that.
yeah, and with a little diskette that you would put into it. And I
Yes.
mean, at back then, if you'd said somebody, "Do you realize that these companies are gonna literally take over the world and become the biggest valued companies on the planet?" I don't know how many people would have believed it, right? They would have kinda said, I don't know about that." But over time, what happened, right? It did. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because although there maybe is a little bit too much AI hype at the moment, I do see genuine fundamental shifts in how I believe humans are going to live, behave, and particularly in work, what will become automated or partially automated or augmented by with computers and with AI technology. I think when I see things like some use cases of medical professionals, they're very busy, right? But if you can start to automate like people's MRI scans to see if they have lung cancer, what might have taken, I don't know, like eight a day at most, because it would take so much time and stuff. Now this computer's just going like this, going through 200 of them at a time. I mean, that's real, right? And I can only imagine that more, because people are still continuing to put so much money into these things. I only foresee it getting better and more realistic and genuinely starting to shape and change like our lives as humans, work and personal, based on what I think I saw happen back in the early 90s and the original dot-com bust 2001, but then everything that's happened over the couple decades since that happened. So
It's been a whirlwind. I mean, you brought back so many memories with that story just now because I remember. So I did my first internship in 2003 at a government agency, and I remember building websites with just HTML and Notepad, and I remember FTPing files to the server.
yeah.
There were no content management. What was it? Content management systems then?
Well, I think a lot of people are using Dreamweaver, but I do.
Dreamweaver.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was actually doing text files, coding, and turning and saving it as .htm, so I totally, and then FTPing it up to a server. I totally remember that myself.
Oh my gosh, Dreamweaver was it. What happened to Dreamweaver and Macromedia?
No, I think, well, Micro or Adobe bought it. I'm sorry, I don't even know if it still exists or if it's turned into one of their other things, but even that, like, look what's already changed with that. People used to have great jobs creating illustrations and modifying and touching up files and video. Adobe's already come out with stuff that's taking away all those people's jobs as graphic designers, and it's just things that will end up as content on some type of virtual medium. So it's just one more example of like how quickly things are changing, right?
All
So
the time. All the time. So I was on social media and I saw this hilarious post. This person was reacting to Chick-fil-A. It was like a little mobile, this little mobile robot that brought Chick-fil-A to someone's driveway. And they scanned their QR code from their phone. The compartment opens for the person to take out their food, and then they take the picture as evidence that they got the food. It closes, and the little robot just drives away. And the person was like, "This is unreal."
I know. I've seen some stuff with that, except they're using drone technology to like fly, stop above somebody's house. It's not ready like for production yet, but it was pretty close enough to think this could be the reality. Drone fly over the house, stop, and it had this strange container thing that was the pulley would go down to the ground, and then it opened up the thing. People took the food out, and then the drone pulled it back up and flew away. So I don't, you know, I try to. I don't know if did you ever watch the Jetsons?
Yes, of course.
I know. I actually like 6 months ago. I don't know why my brain does this, but I'm just like I haven't watched the Jetsons in 20 years, and it's on Amazon Prime. Why don't I just watch it? And I'm looking at it going, oh my gosh, this stuff happened, or it's happening now. And I'm like, that cartoon seriously was a predictor of the future. So, you know,
Okay, you're going to make me watch that this weekend, seriously, because that is going to be really spooky. Or Total Recall. Remember that with the? I think they had like the flying cars or something like that.
yeah,
Driverless cars, robot driving
yeah,
cars, something weird. I can't
yeah.
remember.
At some point, because it's obvious that we've ran out of space on the roads or to build more roads. So the only thing next is now having little cars that fly around each other, like George Jetson tried to get to work at Space Lace Sprockets, and it's all those little space cars.
I would love that because we know the traffic in DC is horrible.
I know it is. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I would love that a
Yeah,
lot.
that'd be cool.
Yes. I did see also that it sounds like the police department was, I don't know if they're officially using this or prototyping using drones to kind of catch, criminals.
Yeah, I think there are some police departments that actually are already using it. I don't know if it's in America or it's in Europe, but I want to say I thought I actually saw some of that actually already in use, or at least trying to. Oh, you know what? I have a great example for you. It wasn't police, but people that have that lawsuits for saying that they were injured and they're suing for huge amounts of money, and the law firms defending the people they're suing sent drones to go film them outside of their house and see them like going like running or jogging or out because shopping like there's nothing wrong, but then they come back and like, oh, I'm injured, oh, I'm injured, and it's like then they go to court and they're so busted and it just they lose the case. So I did see that that's really happening. So
That is awesome. I mean, not for the person
right,
that's
well,
alive.
they shouldn't be suing for fake stuff anyway, but it's pretty funny if you think about it. So
It is pretty funny. Yeah, figure
yeah,
out how you're going to use technology, right? That's a real
right,
use case.
that's true. So
Perfect. Any
so
other thoughts?
no, just I know our world is very Microsoftish, right? So I just looking forward to just the nonstop like flow of all these things that are gonna, we're on the early adopter age of it, but I think it's wise to start learning them now and get in early, and so that because I feel strongly that they're going to become part of just regular people's lives or part of IT on a permanent basis, and go out, have fun. I'm going to the Power Platform Conference in Vegas in a couple weeks, and Ignite's coming up, and we've got all these great community events, some that you help put on yourself, and I think the one in DC is in February. Is that right? Coming up?
February.
Yep. So that's another great one. Just, anybody out there who thinks this is exciting and cool and wants to learn more, check out, you know, you are the events you help or some of the free community sites, and just have fun with it. Create your future now, I'd say.
Yes. Create your future now. CommunityDays.org has a lot of events
Yep.
worldwide.
Yeah, and the community events, I will stand by what they can do for someone's career very strongly, simply because I remember myself back in the early 2000s, and although I had a decent amount of experience, like the level of the job I got was kind of down here. But as I went to these events and I learned, because it's so accessible, people take time to answer your questions or they'll connect with you, and it's free in most cases or very small amount of money, and it just gave me an edge to be able to learn things I never would have, and then to have the courage to realize, wow, I can speak in front of these people and not look too bad. So then you become more confident and have skills as a person. Where now I'm very grateful. Like my jobs that I've gotten are so much higher pay, higher opportunity, higher level things I couldn't have dreamt of 15 years ago. And I strongly think that those community events have been a major part of my, myself being able to fruition and grow in my own career as well. So I highly recommend them to people.
I absolutely agree with that because I remember starting off at user groups and then going to what was SharePoint Saturday conferences back in the day. And then I think the community is so welcoming that you can become a speaker. You go to enough events, meet people, meet the organizers. The speakers are always very friendly as well. So I used to speak like you are doing now, like all over the place in lots of different cities, and then I got burnt out. Um, so
I
that's
think
where
all of us go through that. I think that what they refer to me at the moment is the second win. You did it. You did your world tour 20 times. You ran out and burned out, ran out of energy, and then you realize, well, I think I'm going to go back on tour.
I
so,
very cool.
so, all right.
Well, thank you so much, Matthew. It's always fun talking to you.
Yeah.
You are always welcome back for
Oh,
sure.
thank you. I appreciate you inviting me. It's great to catch up and hash through old IT memories and talk about the
Yeah,
future with AI. So,
absolutely. How can the audience get in
yeah.
contact with you?
Yeah, I'd say the best thing is just reach out to me on LinkedIn. Matthew J. Bailey 1 is the link thing, but if you just type Matthew J. Bailey in the search box, you should hopefully see somebody that looks like me. so,
You have a capital in your background?
yeah, I did. I because I'm in DC. I wanted to kind of, give props to where I'm at. I had a new professional photo taken and just got me in a suit, and there's a beautiful image of the U.S. Capitol in the background. So that's if you see that, you got the right person.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you, Matthew.
All right, thanks. Take care. We'll talk soon.